Share a story. It's not really scout related, but it is a story of inspiration and courage and bravery. And it's about a battle that happened in South Africa. In the 1850s and 60s, Great Britain had stationed a colony in South Africa. It was called Cape Town, and they were spreading their what do you want to call it, expansion into the eastern part of South Africa there. And they, traders and trappers and missionary people had kept going into an area about 400 or 500 miles inland from the coast. And the area that they were approaching in was kind of a hilly. There was rivers that ran through it. It was a very grassy area, so ranchers were wanting to go there. And but the problem was that this area was occupied by the native tribe, I guess if you want to call them, a very large tribe called the Zulus. And they were not happy with having the British settlers moving into their country. So they tried some negotiations up and through the 1870s and to 1878, and both sides had kind of given each other a deadline as to when they wanted to have a settlement, and that time had passed. So the British military brought in a garrison of British soldiers into a place called Rorke's Drift. And it was down on a river bottom with some high cliffs on both sides. And they had the British brought in, and they were under the command of Lieutenant General Lord Chumworth. And Chelmsford. And he had that Rorke's Drift. They made a temporary pontoon bridge, and on January 22nd, they crossed the bridge into Zulu territory and moved up the slopes up into a high plain about 6 miles into Zulu country. And they set up a temporary camp there, about 5,000 British soldiers. Right shortly after they got their camp set up, they spotted about 5,000 to 10,000 Zulu warriors out of the distance north of them. So Lord Chelmsford decided to split his troops, and half of them took off after the Zulus and left the remaining 2,500 British soldiers in camp. As soon as they got out of hearing range, the Zulus came in from behind, attacked them, and literally wiped out 2,500 British soldiers. Very quickly and very fast. They used a bullhead method of attack, where they would come in like the head of a bull with the horns coming out around, and they would completely encircle you, and then they would just wipe you out. There was only 3 people that lived through that, and they made their way back to Rorke's Drift and warned the 150 British soldiers that had been left garrisoned at Rorke's Drift. About 35 of those soldiers were sick and in a hospital being cared for by a surgeon. There was 2 lieutenants, a Lieutenant Gonville Bromhead and a Lieutenant John Chard. Chard was an engineer, and he was responsible for rebuilding and upgrading the pontoon boats. So that was about 1:30 in the afternoon when those 3 men got there. They immediately started to make fortifications around the hospital and a church that was there. They used what we would call sacks of corn. They called them mealie bags, and wooden food crates, which they called biscuit boxes. And they used those as their barricades. About 3:30 in the afternoon, a cry went out, and all of a sudden they looked up, and on all the ridge tops, all the way around, completely encircling Rorke's Drift, was literally thousands of Zulu warriors. They didn't know what the intentions were, what was going to happen. Almost immediately, warriors came down onto the river bottom and attacked. The British British used a gun. Let me back up a little bit. The British used a gun which was much bigger than this one. This is just a little .22, but it was the same style of gun. It was a single shot, breech load, that they would crack open, it would expand the shell, they could put a new one in, and then close it up, pull the hammer back, and it was ready to fire again. The British also wore a bright red coat as part of their uniform, a pith helmet, which was just kind of a soft, it wasn't a metal helmet. But they had that rifle that had also a bayonet on the end of it. And they were very disciplined and very organized. The Zulu warrior probably stood about 6 foot on average tall. He didn't wear much clothing other than like a loincloth and maybe some leather straps below the knees and above the elbows. But he carried a big, heavy shield. It was about this tall. It was kind of in a, I don't know, this kind of a shape. And it was made out of sticks on the frame and then heavy ox hide, real thick ox hide as it stretched over it. And they also carried a spear, which they called them as a geya. And it looked something like this. Had a tip on it of bronze or metal. Their belief was that a man should die in hand-to-hand combat. They had some rifles, but not a lot. Most of them were old muskets or whatnot, and they weren't very well trained on them. The first wave of Zulus that came in, the British were able to defeat them off really quite easily. And they were kind of surprised because they thought it would be a lot more difficult until a lone Dutch trapper that happened to be there with them, who knew the Zulus real well, he said, no, all they're doing is sending in their old and their sick men because they're counting the puffs of smoke to find out how strong your defenses are, which is really, really kind of smart. Almost immediately after that, they continued to, wave after wave of Zulus attacked the British in their encampment there at Rorke's Drift. They attacked and they attacked. Wave after wave would come in. The British were able, for the most part, with their rifle and with their bayonets to fight off the Zulus. All the rest of that day, they kept attacking. The funny thing was that there was a Zulu chief that stood up on a hilltop, and he would use his zega as a means of communication. If he tipped it to the forward, he meant for them to attack from the front. If he tipped it to the left, then he wanted to attack from the left, or the right, or from the rear. And they attacked them all the way around, all that day, rest of that day, rest of that night, into the next day. If they did give them a break, it was just a short break. And about give the British just enough time to maybe get a drink of water and a bite of food and refill their cartridge belts. They attacked all that morning and into the afternoon. At one point, they came in so heavy, their waves came in so strong, that the British used their training and their tactics to line up 3 rows of 15 men. The first row would get down on their knee, the second row would remain standing, and the third row would stand on with biscuit boxes up above. And as Lieutenant Chard and Lieutenant Bromhead would holler out, the first row would fire, and then while they were reloading, then the second row would fire, and then the third row, and then back to the first row, second row, third row. And they just put out a terrible barrage of bullets at these Zulus as they were coming in. The wave was coming in. There got to be so many dead Zulus that they had to actually stack them up like cordwood. There was just so many of them. They continued to attack all that second night, and then at the darkest part of the morning, when you just could hardly see anything, the attack stopped. And the British didn't figure out what was going on. And then as it brightened up, and you could see there wasn't a single Zulu to be spotted. The British wondered, what the heck's going on? They thought, well, maybe we've won, maybe they've left and whatnot. When all of a sudden, the cry went up again, and they are completely surrounding them on all the ridge tops. Was another thousands and thousands of Zulus. And they thought, oh my gosh, here they come again. And they actually started to say, come on, we're ready for you. We haven't given up yet, even though they had lost, several men, probably 12, 15 men of 135. They even brought in some of the sick men to help fight. About that time, all of a sudden the Zulus started singing a song. And the song, they didn't know what it meant, because previously they'd always sang these battle chants as they were getting ready to send their waves in. When that lone Dutch explorer that was there with them that knew about the Zulus, he said, no, they're not attacking. They're singing a song of honor to you. So the British didn't know, they wanted to return that honor back to these Zulus for their bravery and what they had given so many of them had given their lives. So they didn't understand the language, but they understood the tune. So they made up a song that they sang back to the Zulus as they were singing to them. And that song went something like this. I see a Zulu warrior. I see a Zulu chief. I see a Zulu warrior. I see a Zulu chief. See him there, brave Zulu warriors. See him there, great Zulu chief. I see a Zulu warrior. I see a Zulu chief. I see a Zulu warrior. I see a Zulu chief. See him there, brave Zulu warrior. See him there, great Zulu chief. And at that point, the Zulus all turned around and marched away, never to be seen again at that battle. Now, in the United States, we have a military award that is presented for soldiers that show acts of valor in the face of battle. And in England, they have in America, we call it the Congressional Medal of Honor, which is the highest award that can be honored to an American citizen. In England, they have a similar award called the Victoria Cross. And that cross, or that award, was started in the mid-1850s by Queen Victoria. And in all the years from that time till now, and all the thousands of wars that the British nation has been involved in, only 1,356 of those awards have been presented. And for a long time, they didn't present them posthumously, or there would probably been a higher number. At Rorke's Drift, there were 11 of those Victoria Crosses presented. That's the highest single total in all of England's wars presented at one battle. Presented those men who bravely defended that hospital and that commissary. So I guess the idea behind this is that like the British and like the Zulus were brave and had valor and courage, you guys stick with your scouting and be brave, avoid drugs, avoid alcohol, do the things you know are right, and you too will prevail and receive your reward. And I say these, thank you very much.